it would come straight back on that frequency. However, because of Doppler shift, it's going to be offset. And it's going to start off being about 10 degrees. The other thing is, because of Doppler shift, you have to constantly move your frequencies. They're going to go like this. So if this is receive and this is transmit, they're basically going to go like this because of Doppler shift. Because this frequency, center frequency, looping around the bent pipe at the appropriate offset is only going to happen when it's at the shortest point in its pass, which typically would be directly overhead or due east or due west of your position. So you're going to have to basically keep moving your things like this, and plus there's going to be some sort of other offset slightly, and that's because it's not going to be precise, because the orbits are not precise. Fortunately, my radio will do that, and I normally at home I have computer control over it, but I'm not doing that here because it's a pain in the butt to disassemble everything and bring it out to the field. It's easy enough to do. I did it manually for years before I got the computer control for it. And to be honest with you, the computer control software is still pretty obsolete now. So basically, that's what we're going to hear. We're also going to hear everybody sound like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, because it's going to be pretty much about like that. But that's only if we hear them. And the reason that we may not hear them is it may just be too low on the horizon. Normally I have a 7 element 2 meter beam and a 13 element 70 centimeter beam, and that's, you know, with an Azel rotator. I don't use an Azel rotator. I basically set my antenna this way because that's going to handle 90% of the time that the antennas are going to hear it, and I just rotate it in azimuth. So, because if it's the only time it's going to go like this is if it's going directly overhead. Since when do you do that? You're not supposed to do that. But maybe I might have put this in backwards. It's been a while since I used this. So anyway, that's what you're going to see. And John's going to basically move the antenna around. So I'm going to be screaming out azimuth readings. As far as elevation for this pass, we may not have to test it because I think the maximum elevation is only going to be 10 degrees. But there's another pass in about a little under 2 hours. And that one will be coming pretty much directly overhead. And hopefully we'll hear it with that. There's
what are you
trying
to access?
I'm trying to access a satellite called Fuji Oscar 29.
Okay.
Now this satellite was launched in 1987. It's been in space now for almost 30 years.
Wow.
This satellite's batteries, well, you know what happens to batteries. How many people here have lost their NiCad batteries on their HTs?
Yeah.
They go out. And basically that's the technology that are in these satellites. There were no lithium batteries in those days. And the solar panels were not the best. Now I'll tell you a story. This is a very romantic story, but you don't have to cry. So there was a satellite called Oscar 7. It was the 7th amateur satellite that was launched, and it was launched in 1971. And it died in 1976. And the way it failed was the batteries shorted out. Older batteries do that. Okay, 5 years. This is a really good long-lived satellite. In 2003, it's a guy sitting over in England. He's hearing Morse code on a satellite band, and he's going, that's not supposed to be there. So he calls AMSAT headquarters. I used to be on the board at the time. He calls AMSAT, and he says, did somebody launch a new satellite? And they go, no. And he says, well, here's the Morse code that here's the telemetry that I copied. And we knew immediately this was impossible because that was Oscar 7. What happens when you have a short over time, it heats up and eventually burns out the circuit and the batteries open up. Well, there was no regulators on the satellites in those days. This is 1976, remember. So the solar panels power up, and whenever it's in sun, it turns on. And you know, maybe a couple minutes after it goes into darkness, it turns back off again because it runs out of solar panel, and the capacitors have all discharged. In the case of both of these satellites, part of the problem is the batteries. There's no battery on Oscar 7, and there's very minimal batteries on the Fuji Oscar 29. Unfortunately, we're here in Connecticut. There's a whole shitload of people down in Connecticut, in the south, who are going to try to operate this satellite. They're going to be hitting it with a ton of power, and that could cause it to overload and go into a battery fault condition. So those kind of things can happen. But I've been working it now for a couple months, so hopefully we'll hear it.
Can you show us again, where's the path-through thing going to be, like this?
Okay, John's going to basically...
50 is about that way.
Yeah, so we're going to start about here, and then we're going to go this way.
But you feel like 10 degrees or so above the horizon?
Yeah, it's going to be about 10 degrees above the horizon. So it's going to come up like this and go like that.
So you're just going to spin
It's
it.
11
And he's just going to be...
Spin it on the axis.
All right, so we're going to get ready right now. I got to get the frequency set up, and I got to make sure that I have the right antenna.
Does it matter that there's trees in the road?
Well, those are 2 meters and 440. It's not. Could be. That's not the album.
You wait.
Can take a
We're good.
Power.
That's just a buddy call.
It's all connected to the same. The elements are all coupled
Doesn't
together.
matter.
So what isolates the two transmitters?
There's only one transmitter, and that's all.
One's receiving and one's transmitting.
Buddy pole typically runs about 4 meters. Emily has the extended. No, there's no.
John, did you see my diplexer today?
No.
Yeah, it's probably in the car.
You want me to go take a look in the car?
Probably in the back.
That guy, Frank? Who's here?